Champions League 2024-25 Power Rankings. Liverpool still unstoppable, Real Madrid on the rise, but Manchester City and Paris Saint-Germain at risk of an embarrassingly early exit. GOAL rates each team's hopes of winning this season's expanded tournament after 6 rounds of the new league phase. It's getting interesting now. With just 2 rounds of the bloated Champions League phase remaining, a couple of big names are in danger of elimination, or at least failing to finish in the top 8. Despite a predictably facile win over Red Bull Salzburg, Paris Saint-Germain remain 25th in the standings, just outside the playoff places, and their next game is against Manchester City, who have dropped to 22nd amid one of the most dramatic dips in form in football history. Elsewhere, Liverpool maintained their perfect record, Real Madrid eased their early exit fears with a vital win over Atalanta, while Bayern Munich are back in the hunt for a top 8 finish. Looking at the bigger picture, though, who's perfectly placed to mount a serious trophy challenge? GOAL ranks all 36 teams below while rating their chances of winning the tournament based on their results, fixtures, momentum, pedigree and quality. Number 33, Red Bull Salzburg. Red Bull Salzburg put up a fight in Tuesday's 3-0 loss at home to Paris Saint-Germain, but, in truth, they once again looked out of their depth at Champions League level. Pep Leinder's struggling side aren't mathematically out of the running just yet, but, after a 5th defeat in 6 games, there's no hope of them getting into the playoffs. Goalkeeper Alexander Schlager says they just need to focus on trying to enjoy their last couple of games, but even that might be tough. They face Real Madrid next and then Atletico Madrid on matchday 8, meaning there's a serious chance they'll suffer more bad beatings before they bow out. Number 32 Bologna. It was always likely that Bologna would struggle in the Champions League, having lost their coach Thiago Motta, their star striker Joshua Zirkzee and their best defender Riccardo Calafiori after last season's historic qualification, so it's not come as a major surprise to see them collect just 2 points from their 6 games. The lack of a goalscorer is, as expected, absolutely killing the Rossoblu, who have netted just 1 so far. Bologna now need other results to go their way while taking maximum points from their final 2 games against Dortmund and Sporting CP to go through, and that's just not happening. They're as good as out. Number 31 Sparta Prague. The game is up for Sparta Prague. The Czechs took 4 points from their first 2 games, but Wednesday's 4-2 loss at Feyenoord means they've now lost their last 4. They're not mathematically out of the running for a playoff spot, but it would take a belated Christmas miracle for them to beat both Inter and Bayer Leverkusen after the winter break. Number 30, Sturm Graz. After 4 consecutive defeats, Sturm Graz finally gave their supporters something to sing about by pulling off a shock 1-0 win away to Girona on matchday 5. The Austrians also looked set to pick up at least a point in Lille after coming from 2-0 down at the Stade Pierre-Mauroy. However, Graz folded under late pressure, and that defeat has all but ended their qualification hopes, because even though they have Leipzig at home in their final game, they first have to travel to Bergamo to face Serie A leaders Atalanta. Number 29 Girona. Girona have just 3 points and only 2 games remaining, so while they're not mathematically out of the running, it would take a brave man to back the tournament debutants to progress at this point. Given their final 2 fixtures are away to AC Milan and at home to Arsenal, the Catalans put up a decent fight in Tuesday's 1-0 loss to Liverpool, but they've simply thrown too many points away against PSG, Feyenoord and Sturm Graz to make a compelling case for them turning things around at this late stage. Early elimination beckons. Number 28, Dinamo Zagreb. Enormous credit must go to Dinamo Zagreb for the way in which they responded to a nightmare start to their campaign. The Croats suffered a humiliating 9-2 loss to Bayern Munich on matchday 1, and then, to make matters worse, blew a 2-goal lead in drawing at home with Monaco by conceding twice in the final 16 minutes of normal time. However, despite vital victories over Red Bull Salzburg and Slovan Bratislava, Dinamo's playoff hopes are still hanging by a thread after Tuesday's desperately disappointing 0-0 draw with Celtic. They still need at least a couple of points to be sure of going through, and the problem is that they conclude their league phase campaign away to Arsenal and at home to AC Milan. Number 27, Shakhtar Donetsk. For about 10 minutes, it felt like there was a chance that Shakhtar Donetsk might pull off the shock win over Bayern Munich they so badly needed, but they were ultimately swatted aside by the German giants, with the Ukrainians losing 5-1 in their adopted home of Gelsenkirchen despite taking an early lead through Brazilian attacker Kevin. Shakhtar could yet propel themselves back into playoff contention by beating Brest on matchday 7, but it's still hard to see them making the knockout stage, given they would also have to defeat Borussia Dortmund at Signal Iduna Park in their final fixture to progress. Number 26, Red Star Belgrade. Red Star Belgrade left San Siro feeling pretty sorry for themselves. The Serbians had deservedly drawn level against AC Milan with a thunderous strike from Nemanja Radonjic, only to concede an 87th-minute winner to Tammy Abraham that robbed them of a precious point. All is not yet lost. Red Star could well win their final two games, against PSV home and Young Boys away, but it's impossible to say at this stage if 9 points would be enough to progress to the playoffs. Number 25 Stuttgart. Stuttgart appeared to throw in the towel during their embarrassing 5-1 loss to Dinamo Zagreb a fortnight ago, but by beating Young Boys by the same scoreline on Wednesday, to end a 14-year wait for a Champions League home win, Sebastian Hoeneß's seemingly resurgent side are right back in the qualification mix. A victory away to the already eliminated Slovan Bratislava would take them to 10 points, all but guaranteeing a playoff spot, and allow them to enjoy their final round clash with Paris Saint-Germain at the MHP Arena. Number 24, PSV. What a time for PSV to produce what Peter Bosz called the worst performance in my time as coach. The Dutch champions dominated possession against Brest on Tuesday night and had plenty of efforts on goal, but they were, as striker Luc de Jong admitted, unrecognizable from the team that beat both Girona and Shakhtar Donetsk, and Eindhoven and failed to score in a game in any competition for the first time this season. The net result is that PSV now need to go to Belgrade and beat Red Star to claim a playoff place before they welcome Liverpool to the Philips Stadion. Number 23, Celtic. After rousing home wins over Slovan Bratislava and RB Leipzig, Celtic were given something of a reality check by Club Brugge, who held the boys to a 1-1 draw on matchday 5, primarily due to a horrible own goal from Cameron Carter-Vickers. However, Brendan Rodgers' team picked up a hard-earned point away to Dinamo Zagreb in one of Tuesday's early kickoffs that means they'll secure a playoff spot if they beat Young Boys next time out. Celtic, who haven't reached the knockout stage of the Champions League since 2013, really couldn't have realistically hoped for a better scenario when the league phase got underway. Number 20 to Paris Saint-Germain. Paris Saint-Germain have become synonymous with catastrophic capitulations, but, even by their incredibly low standards, failing to finish in the top 24 of a 32-team league phase would be truly incredible. It remains a very real risk, though, even after the inevitable but much-needed 3-0 win over Salzburg, which came courtesy of goals from Goncalo Ramos, Nuno Mendes and Desire Doué. PSG still have just 7 points and must host Manchester City next before traveling to Stuttgart on the final matchday. Fair to say, then, that Luis Enrique and his players still have an awful lot of work to do to avoid an embarrassingly early exit. Number 21, Club Brugge. Club Brugge lost 2 of their first 3 games, but a couple of massive home wins over Aston Villa and Sporting CP, either side of a draw at Celtic, mean they now have 10 points to their name, all but guaranteeing the Belgians a playoff berth, and that's just as well, really, as Nicky Haynes' side must now take on Juventus in Manchester City. Still, Brugge will be looking forward to their home game against the former, given they've already shown themselves to be a force to be reckoned with at the Jan Bredel Stadium, with Christos Zolis, who was man of the match in the stirring, come from behind win over Sporting, proving himself a real handful in attack. Number 20, Sporting CP. As feared, Sporting have capitulated since losing coach Ruben Amorim to Manchester United during the last international break, losing their last 4 games in all competitions. 2 of those defeats have come in the Champions League, with the Lisbon outfit routed 5-1 at home by Arsenal before being beaten 2-1 in Bruges despite taking an early lead. The good news is that Thiago Teixeira's Sporting can still get to 16 points by beating Leipzig and Bologna, but, on current form, that looks unlikely. A glorious chance to go straight through to the last 16 looks set to be squandered. Number 19, Feyenoord. Feyenoord are on a wild roller coaster ride in this season's Champions League, and the fans are absolutely loving it. De Koop was jumping on Wednesday night as Brian Prisk's side followed up their sensational 3-3 draw with Manchester City at the Etihad with a 4-2 victory over Sparta Prague. The Dane was preaching caution afterwards, but 10 points means a 99% chance of making the playoffs. Finishing in the top section is probably beyond them as they wrap up against Bayern Munich and Lille, but they'll already be looking forward to their home game against the Bavarians on matchday 7. Number 18, Benfica. Benfica's topsy-turvy campaign has yielded 10 points so far, so it's highly likely they've already done enough to make the playoffs. Another couple of wins would probably seal a last 16 spot too. However, it would take a brave man to back Benfica, one of the most unpredictable sides in the tournament. The Eagles may have routed Atletico Madrid on matchday, but they've also lost at home to Feyenoord and failed miserably to break down Bologna on Wednesday night. Who knows what to expect? Then, when they host Barca next before traveling to Turin to take on Juventus. Number 17, Monaco. The wheels appear to be coming off Adi Hutter's Monaco. The League One outfit were in an excellent position to progress directly to the last 16 after taking 10 points from their first 4 games, a sensational start that included a 2-1 win over Barcelona. However, Monaco suffered a late collapse at home to Benfica on matchday 5 before being played off the Emirates pitch in a 3-0 loss to Arsenal on Wednesday. Even Hutter admitted afterwards that the final scoreline flattered his side. With just 2 rounds remaining, Monaco now know that if they don't beat Aston Villa at the Stade Louis II on matchday 7, they'll have no chance of getting into the top 8 by the time they arrive at San Siro to face Inter on January 29. Number 16, Brest. The revelation of this season's Champions League, without a shadow of a doubt. Brest spent roughly €10 million in the summer transfer market, relying mostly on loan deals and free agency to cope with the loss of key members of the squad that pulled off a stunning third-place finish in League One last season. And yet Eric Roy, who had been out of the coaching game for a decade before taking over at Brest in 2023, has the Champions League debutants on the verge of qualifying for the last 16. Tuesday's hard-fought 1-0 win over PSV has moved Brest up to 13 points, meaning if they were to beat Shakhtar Donetsk on matchday 7, they'd probably be already sure of a top 8 finish before they host Real Madrid in their final game, which would just be the most remarkable achievement for a club so small that they have to play their home games in Guingamp because their own stadium doesn't meet UEFA regulations. Please, like, share and subscribe to my channel, thank you. Number 15, Lille. You've really got to hand it to Bruno Genesio. He's done a fantastic job at Lille since replacing Paulo Fonseca at the helm during the summer. Les Dogues haven't lost in League One since the middle of September, while Wednesday's hard-fought 3-2 victory over Sturm Graz, which came courtesy of Ingaliel Mukau's double, means they've now taken 13 points from their last 5 Champions League games, which includes wins over the 2 Madrid teams, as well as a draw with Juventus. With the top 20 for berth already secure, Lille can now target automatic qualification for the last 16. Clearly, winning away to Liverpool is a big ask, but the informed French side will definitely fancy themselves to defeat Feyenoord in their final game at the Stade Pierre-Mauroy. Number 14, Manchester City. Manchester City were beaten to 2-0 by Juventus on Wednesday night and nobody was in the least bit surprised. How on earth did we end up here? The reigning English champions have obviously had their injury issues this season. The loss of Rodri has been a predictably heavy blow, but that still doesn't fully explain why one of the strongest and most expensively assembled squads in the history of the game is suddenly bereft of confidence and cohesion, particularly in defense. Blips are, of course, inevitable in football, but nobody expected Cities to go on this long. They've now lost 7 of their last 10 games in all competitions, and there's an actual chance that they might not even make the Champions League playoffs, which would have been unthinkable at the start of the season, particularly given the very forgiving format. They should still progress, of course, as they have Club Brugge at home on matchday 8. However, if they were to be beaten by PSG at the Parc des Princes beforehand, they'd have no hope of finishing in the top 8, and would also be under even more pressure going into that final fixture. Number 13, Aston Villa. Just how important could Ross Barkley's late, deflected winner against RB Leipzig prove to be for Aston Villa? Unai Emery's men had already achieved their primary target by effectively guaranteeing a playoff place, but they're now able to aim significantly higher thanks to their 3-2 win at the Red Bull Arena. Monaco away on matchday 7 represents a tough task for Villa, but even if they don't win at the Stade Louis II, they'd still hit 16 points by beating Celtic at home in their final game, which would almost certainly secure a top 8 berth. The former European Cup winners' domestic form has been patchy of late, but, as they've already proven by beating Bayern Munich, Villa are a formidable proposition in Birmingham, particularly when John Duran comes off the bench. Number 12, AC Milan. Milan are a very curious team under Paulo Fonseca. Wednesday's 2-1 victory over Red Star Belgrade moved the Rossoneri up to 12th in the standings and, with soft fixtures to come against Girona home and Dinamo Zagreb away, an immediate place in the last 16 is now there for the taking for a club that has now won 4 consecutive matches in the Champions League for the first time since 2005, and yet Fonseca was utterly bewildered by his side's performance at San Siro, where they needed a contentious late goal from Tammy Abraham to come out on top. The Portuguese even questioned his players' work rate and character in a remarkably frank post-match interview. Milan, who sit 7th in Serie A, are a bit like their most talented player Rafael Leao. There's clearly a lot of potential there, but you never really know how they're going to play on a given night. Number 11 Juventus. Boy did Thiago Motta need that. The Juventus coach's methods were under serious scrutiny going into Wednesday's meeting with Manchester City and Turin, with the Bianconeri constantly drawing games and often while playing dreadfully dull football. However, Motta said that they could not be playing struggling City at a better time, and he was right. The Bianconeri beat the English champions to 2-0 thanks to goals from Dusan Vlahovic and Weston McKennie to all but seal a playoff place, with 11 points. All of a sudden, automatic qualification for the last 16 is a real possibility for Juve, who go to Bruges on matchday 7 before hosting Benfica in the final round. Number 10, Real Madrid. They just always find a way to win, don't they? And particularly when they're really up against it, as they were in Tuesday's night's vital victory in Bergamo. Carlo Ancelotti's team came under intense pressure for the final half against Atalanta, but despite the fact that they're missing several key defenders through long-term injuries, they held on to their 3-2 lead, triumphing through a combination of individual brilliance, remarkable resilience, and a significant chunk of good fortune. Madrid still only have 9 points with 2 games to go, but a couple of wins over Salzburg and Brest might just be enough to secure automatic qualification for the last 16. Number 9, Borussia Dortmund. The 3-2 defeat at home to Barcelona was a tough one for Borussia Dortmund to take. They'd more than played their part in a thrilling contest. BVB had the higher XG and were only undone by a dreadful misplaced pass that led to Ferran Torres' late winner. However, Nuri Sahin's maddeningly inconsistent side should take plenty of positives out of their performance against the Spanish league leaders, while they also remain in with a serious shot of finishing in the top part of the table. Finishing with back-to-back wins over struggling Bologna and Shakhtar Donetsk would get them up to 18 points, which looks a very realistic target for Dortmund, with Serhou Guirassy in fine form up front. Number 8 Atalanta. How on earth did Atalanta lose to Real Madrid? Gian Piero Gasparini's side were by far the better side against the reigning champions, and deserved at least a draw, but they were left counting the cost of some poor defending and wayward finishing at the most inopportune of times. Still, Atalanta already have 11 points in the bag, and it would be a surprise if they don't sweep Sturm Graz aside on January 21st. If they do, they'll head to Barcelona on matchday 8 with a serious shot at finishing in the top 8, and, given the form of the likes of Ademola Lookman and Charles de Ketelare in attack, the Serie A leaders certainly won't intimidated by the challenge of trying to beat the Blaugrana in their own backyard. Number 7 Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid are not the rock-solid model of consistency they once were, but the Rojiblancos remain as resilient as ever. Diego Simeone's side were in a serious spot of bother after a couple of dreadful defeats against Benfica and Lille, but a dramatic victory over Paris Saint-Germain at the Parc des Princes has turned their entire campaign around. Indeed, Wednesday's 3-1 victory over Slovan Bratislava was their third in a row and secured a playoff berth. Consequently, the mouth-watering matchday 7 meeting with Bayer Leverkusen at the Metropolitano will likely decide if Atleti go straight through to the last 16, and they'll be really looking forward to that game, particularly as star summer signing Julian Alvarez and club legend Antoine Griezmann are starting to look like they might form a formidable front two, which was obviously the hope all along. Number 6, Bayer Leverkusen. Well, it finally happened. Someone actually managed to score a goal against Inter, and it was a decisive strike too. Nordi Mukiel netted in the 90th minute to earn Bayer Leverkusen a 1-0 win over the Nerazzurri that moved Xabi Alonso's side level on points with their Italian opponents 13. A top 8 finish is now there for the taking for Leverkusen. Even if they don't win away to Atletico Madrid on matchday 8, victory over Sparta Prague in their final game would get them to 16 points, and that should easily be enough to go straight through to the last 16. Given the dominant nature of their performance against Inter, who didn't cause Leverkusen any problems at the Bay Arena, the German double winners will be viewed as a team to avoid in the knockout stage. Number 5, Bayern Munich. It's been a wild ride so far for Bayern fans under new coach Vincent Kompany, with the Belgians team starting the season scoring freely before then focusing on shoring up the defense. However, Bayern showed off their attacking threat once again in Tuesday's 5-1 rout of Shakhtar Donetsk, with Michael Olise the star of the show with 2 goals and an assist. The victory, which was made all the more impressive for the fact that star striker Harry Kane was missing through injury, means Bayern are now well placed to finish in the top 8. Back-to-back wins over Feyenoord away and Slovan Bratislava home would get Kompany's men to 18 points. Number 4, Inter. Inter were so close to recording a 6th consecutive clean sheet in this season's competition, but a mix of misfortune and some uncharacteristically lax defending saw them concede a late winner in Leverkusen. The performance at the Bay Arena was poor. As Simone Inzaghi admitted, his team offered almost nothing going forward, but he clearly had one eye on a big serious showdown with Lazio, as Lautaro Martinez, Federico Di Marco and Nicolo Barella all started on the bench. With 13 points already on the board, Inter also remain perfectly placed to finish among the top 8 in the Champions League, as they face Sparta Prague away next before wrapping up with a home game against Monaco. Number 3. Arsenal. Arsenal's lack of a lethal no.9 has been a talking point for so long now that it's actually become something of a cliché, and it was undeniably frustrating to see the North Londoners miss so many chances in the 3-0 win over Monaco. Nonetheless, Mikel Arteta's men are starting to look like their old exciting selves, thanks primarily to the return of captain and creator-in-chief Martin Odegaard from injury, and have even become a major threat at set pieces. The third-place Gunners, who will seal a top 8 finish by beating Dinamo Zagreb at the Emirates on matchday 7, don't have the pedigree to suggest they'll go all the way this season, but they certainly have the talent and all-round game to do so. Number 2. Barcelona. Is there a more exciting team in Europe right now? With their risky high line and stellar forward players, Lamine Yamal is just freakishly good. Hansi Flick's Barcelona almost guarantee goals, as so thrillingly illustrated in Wednesday's 3-2 win over Borussia Dortmund at Signal Iduna Park. A 5th consecutive victory means the Blaugrana are now mathematically sure of a playoff place. Even one more point from games against Benfica and Atalanta would likely be enough to secure a top 8 finish. Barca obviously remain a work in progress under Flick, and they've had their ups and downs in Spain of late, but a team that's already rooted both Real Madrid La Liga and Bayern Munich Champions League this season is clearly re-emerging as a major force. Number 1. Liverpool. There's just no stopping Liverpool right now. The Premier League leaders are also top of the Champions League, having won all 6 of their European games to date. Obviously, Tuesday's 1-0 victory over Girona was less impressive than the 4-0 rout of Bayer Leverkusen and the 2-0 defeat of Real Madrid, but Mohamed Salah was once again decisive for Arne Slot's side. Liverpool's current form -19 wins from 22 matches in all competitions is clearly unsustainable, but just looking solely at their Champions League prospects, they couldn't be in a better position. The Reds are now certain to finish in the top 8. Meaning Slot should get a chance to rest key men during the winter months, and are also likely to progress as the top seeds. Please, like, share and subscribe to my channel, thank you.